Political Action and Voting by Thomas Weatherby for Leadership and Social Change. So what is political involvement? Political involvement is defined by Comu's as the form of individual civic engagement participating in processes of government, such as campaigning and voting. This includes keeping informed about issues in the local, national, and global communities in order to vote responsibly, and engaging in discourse and debate about social issues. Forms of political involvement also include contacting elected officials, protesting, volunteering for a political party, boycotting products, as well as a plethora of other activities and demonstrations that can all be forms of involving ourselves in politics. So why is political involvement important? Political involvement is one of the most important and fundamental forms of civic engagement. It connects our individual values and core beliefs with the many times amorphous role we assign politics to our daily lives. It's sometimes difficult to recognize the direct connection between our government and the lives we live, but everything from our names, medical care, schools, community, and almost every facet of our lives are determined by the confines of law that our government sets. Our engagement in politics and our willingness to create change within the confines of our system determines our future. Today, more than ever, freedoms such as freedom of speech, freedom of press, and others have been put in danger by lawmakers who want to open libel laws to criminalize free speech. Many freedoms once believed to be a right are now in the hands of our elected officials. Therefore, it is up to the voters to decide. So why is voting important? According to the civilrights.org website, voting is the language of the American democracy, the ability to participate in civic life, to have a voice in choosing the elected officials whose decisions impact our lives, family, and communities is at the core of what it means to be an American. Voting is how we as individuals directly participate in the democratic process and impact the face and values of our democracy. Democracy is the ultimate form of collaboration where it's the people who determine the governing body. By voting in a democracy, we as citizens can vote for leaders that represent us, our ideas, as well as our interests. Political action and the social change model. The social change model is a great lens for looking at political action and finding meaningful, value-based solutions for today's problems. Through this lens, we may ask questions such as, what is my political identity? Which would be consciousness of self. Or, who are the elected officials that best represent my values and beliefs? Which would be congruence. We can also ask ourselves, how can I support my favored representatives? Which could be commitment. Or, what are our shared values, beliefs? Which would be our common purpose. Then we have collaboration, which would be how do we work together to create said change? Or controversy with civility, what is the best solution? And then we have citizenship to round it out with it, which is how does this solution benefit our community? Each of these questions are marked by one of the C's in the change model, and all of these are important in determining what our political identity is and how we are going to act in our society in accordance to it. According to Comu's, the ultimate goal of leadership is to enact the values at each of these levels, individual, group, and community, to influence intended change. Change beyond the individual or group level requires a political body to represent and enact change within a local, state, national, or global level. Political action is the ways we insert ourselves into the conversation in order to implement change on a level larger than ourselves. Voting and other political actions are mechanisms we have put in place to enable citizens to see the changes they desire, as well as hold lawmakers accountable to their constituents. Consciousness of self is defined as an understanding of one's own values and beliefs. An informed vote requires an understanding on what your policy standings are, rather than the rhetorical arguments politicians make on stage. Having personal policy positions and having discussions with others creates informed voters and creates meaningful ballots based on what benefits the people rather than the partisanship. Congruence in voting. When we vote for elected officials in which represent our values and beliefs, we have meaningfully impacted our government to better serve the people. Congruence is when our actions are reflective of our core beliefs and values. By becoming informed voters, we ensure congruence by making our vote count for the change that we would like to see. A conscious vote in which reflects one's personal values and beliefs ultimately is the manifestation of congruence. Those who may feel their choices and decisions in their life don't match their beliefs and values can feel reassurance when one's vote is in reflection of one's own values. Responsibility as citizens to vote. Citizenship, as defined in our book by Gomez, occurs when one becomes responsibly connected to the society or community in which one resides by actively working toward change to benefit others through care, service, social responsibility, and community involvement. When we vote in accordance with both what aligns with our individual values, but also to the benefit or demise of our community. It is important, as a citizen, to elect officials that will work towards change that will both benefit oneself and their community. Voting disenfranchisement. According to civilrights.org, at our nation's founding, voting was enshrined only for educated white men who owned property. It took more than a century for the franchise to meaningfully expand to people of color, women, people with disabilities, people who are low income, and Native Americans. Today, some elected leaders are still working to silence people who were historically denied access to the ballot box. Voting, as a right, has been challenged by those who recognize their power can only be held by disenfranchising voters. The midterm last month had most people in and out of the box office in rural Republican areas, while many cities lacking voting infrastructure had lines spanning up to 3 hours wait times. When people are forced to miss work, school, or otherwise miss the voting deadlines, it makes our duty more than just voting, but also working to educate voters on early voting, absentee by mail ballots, and volunteering at your local ballot box. As a leader, political civil engagement can go as little as voting for a candidate or as far as campaigning and door knocking for your favored representative. Challenges created to disenfranchise voters are best met with community engagement from phone booking to door knocking. According to the Brennan Center, over the last 20 years, states have put barriers in front of the ballot box, imposing strict voter ID laws, cutting voting times, restricting registration, purging voter rolls, as well as other things. These effects, which received a boost when the Supreme Court weakened the Voting Rights Act in 2013, have kept significant numbers of eligible voters from the polls, hitting all Americans but placing special burdens on racial minorities, poor people, and young and old voters. Today, voting isn't a right to all Americans. Voting ID laws make it complicated for people to register to vote, even those who are American citizens. Many minority populations are unable to have their voice represented, whether they are Native Americans, creating barriers for U.S. voting, or they're felons or ex felons, making it hard or impossible to vote, or refugees and migrants who are voiceless, as they are commonly barred from citizenship because they have crossed the border illegally or are staying on an expired visa. There are even Americans born and raised in the United States territories like Puerto Rico, in which have no representation in the House of Representatives and are generally barred and denied from voting. Millions of people are unable to vote because of the barriers lawmakers have purposefully placed on specific voting blocks to ensure partisan wins. Citizenship has been used historically to discount and eliminate a people's representation in our democracy. As leaders, we must work to elect leaders that work to uphold democracy and the ideas that people decide the governing body in the communities that they live in. Voting is an essential part to the core of the social change model. Voting brings forth change. Lawmakers have decided who gets to sit at the table of democracy. Those who have the privilege to vote in America ought to do so in order to enrich their lives and their communities. As leaders, we must fight for everybody to get a seat at the table and ensure everyone in America is valued under our laws. We must fight for every legal, non legal, and complicated citizen a voice in the community in which they live in to incite the change they want to see. All political involvement is valid, no matter how little impact it may feel. The important part is that you are upholding the democratic process and implementing change for the betterment of all.